This episode is brought to you by Classical Conversations. To find out more, please visit classicalconversations.com.
Idaho politics. Does anybody care about this?
I do.
Does the world?
I live here.
I live here. Do you? Lions and tigers and monkeys, oh my.
Oh, I know what you're...
You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Medicare and horse racing. Figure that. Yep.
Medicare for horses? We're getting to everybody else.
Hey, don't forget CrossPolitic Club, Coffee, Christmas.
We got coffee. I don't even... Where's my mug at?
Christmas is coming up.
Oh.
Our club members, I've already had a couple of people email me about this.
Christmas.
Yeah.
They want to talk about Christmas.
I want to buy a club membership for my husband.
It's not even Thanksgiving yet,
I know.
people.
And I'm do it, but I'm going to try to put together some sort of card that we can put as a
stocking stuffer.
Yeah, as a stocking stuffer kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, anyways, thank you for joining the show. Share it now,
that's
you guys.
your camera. Right
is that
there.
one? Well,
yeah.
Well, you told me at the very beginning. Remember we had that conversation.
Okay, let me clear this up. When we have a guest on the phone.
Okay.
Not Bill.
All right.
We look at the center camera.
Okay.
When we do a regular show.
Okay.
Yeah, look at your camera. Come on, Gabe.
Okay, is this a regular show?
How long have we been doing this?
I'm sorry, Bill.
Anyways, thank you for share the show. If you guys want to contact us, that's my mug. Yeah. Get your hand off my mug.
What's in that mug?
That's what I was checking. Just water.
What are you doing?
Can I start a show?
Would you please move your cable to the back? Oh, man. Why do you do this to me?
Every time.
You keep talking.
Every time.
All right. And then if you guys want to contact us, contact at crosspolitic.com. And what else was I going to say?
If you're from Eastern Europe, please stop hacking our website.
Please, yes.
What's wrong with you people?
Our website's been hacked like 3 or 4 times.
If you've
in the
been
last
having trouble
month,
logging on, maybe it's because somebody in Yugoslavia.
My bad.
You were in Yugoslavia.
I made it look like I was in Yugoslavia.
Hey, just as a reminder, if you're a club member, you get access to our CrossPolitic Worldview Shotgun series.
Shotgun.
Our Worldview Shotgun series. And some of you might not know about this, but also it is available for purchase. We did this. It's 10 shows.
Yep.
They're short 30-minute segments describing basically like where we're coming from.
Yeah.
Yep.
You could use it as a small group Bible study, probably. You could use it, you can listen to it on vacation. But it's 10 segments on basically how we see the Bible and the gospel of Jesus informing how we look at politics and culture and all of life. And so
church, government,
so if you want to, like, what's with those guys? Why they think that way? So on. What's wrong with you people?
What's wrong with you?
Well, the Worldview Shotgun series is a great way to find out. So please check it.
On it today.
Check it out.
Yeah.
What about the keys of the kingdom?
Oh, yes. There we go. Bill's like, what is going on?
And with us in the studio today, Mr. Bill Goesling. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
We're going to introduce him more later, but he is running for House of Representatives in the state of Idaho.
In our county.
In our district.
Our district,
which is a couple of counties.
Yes.
And so anyways, great to have you, Bill.
Don't
appreciate that.
Like that again.
We're not going to talk about this?
Oh, and also, if you're a club member, you get a 20% discut. 10%?
I forget. 10 or 20.
And you can just buy these things anyways. If you've got a little baby that needs to be baptized.
Yeah.
Go baptize your kids if you have children.
Do you have anything else we haven't hit yet?
Just on it. Wow.
I got some more.
That was incredible.
What
Knox.
about Texas?
Deep in the heart
of Texas.
All right.
Gabe's from Texas.
Yeah.
So we have to.
It's for me.
Yeah.
Real quick, I just wanted to say about the Worldview series. It's free to our club members. You guys can go into the club membership to download it. And then secondly, it's going to be in iTunes hopefully by the end of this week. So
let's hope
it's submitted to the store. It's just processing and all that stuff.
And so you can actually, if you find a favorite track, you can buy it. If you want to just get
one
that
track.
But hopefully the whole thing's useful for you. So absolutely.
So anyways, all right, let's get into Idaho news. This is a show about Idaho politics.
Which is why Bill's here.
Which is why Bill's here. And after the show, you guys are going to probably know more about Idaho than you really care about to know. That's probably what's going to happen.
No. They're going to say, wow, Idaho.
I want to move here.
We want to move there.
I want to move
Did
here.
you guys see that Moscow got listed in like the best towns in the country to move to?
Yeah, to raise children.
To raise children.
Yep.
Number 1?
Don't do it.
In the country?
We like our little town.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
I wonder did you see how they're ranking them?
I just skimmed really fast.
Yeah.
Did you read it, Bill?
No, who ranked us?
I actually forget the
I know
the website.
I saw it.
Is that a tough question for him?
No.
Bill's coming.
Just
with
wait
it.
till I ask you questions.
That's it. Idaho Fishing Games. Blake Fisher. He's the Idaho Fishing Games commissioner.
What's his name?
Blake Fisher.
Okay.
He's going to be a notorious Blake Fisher.
Fisher.
He went on a little hunting trip.
And he worked for Idaho Fishing
He
Games.
did. He
I
did.
know. Providence, right?
And he went on a little hunting trip to Namibia.
Oh, come on. Namibia. Come on.
And he took some pictures of all his games. So he killed some.
I saw some of them.
A leopard. I said lions and tigers and monkeys, but a leopard, giraffe, an impala, a water buck, and then a family of baboons.
Right.
And he took those pictures and he emailed them out to
Some of his friends.
about 125 of his friends.
I don't even have that many friends. To be
And
honest
I'm
with
like,
you. I got like maybe 6.
and I'm like, please never include me in that kind of chain email in the first place. It's just going to get deleted no matter what. I don't care if there's pictures in there or not. And so he emailed out. Well, anyways, somehow it leaked through his friend list and out to the public.
Can't imagine 150
Oh, boy.
people.
I know, 125.
Let
And
me roll these up.
And one of the pictures, I think the picture that really bothered everybody was the family of baboons that he killed, where there was mom, dad, brother, and little baby sister.
The giraffe bothered me.
The draft did?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well,
And
I'll talk about it in a second.
all right. And then the little baby sister. So that's what I think kind of got everybody. Well,
The
anyways,
little baby sister.
that's right. That's what I assume. I'm trying to make it as sad as possible. and so anyways, he got pressured to step down from the Idaho Fishing Game
Not just
Commissioner.
pressured. The governor.
Well, so I got a quote from Governor Otter said, "I
We're
have
sorry, Governor.
high expectations and standards for every appointee in the state of government. Every member of my administration expected to exercise good judgment, and Commissioner Fisher did not."
Really?
Yeah. So that's pretty hard.
Pretty strong language.
Yeah, exactly. So what are your? I got tons of thoughts on this.
I actually, since we have a guest, I think we should let our guest.
Okay, let's start with Bill. Bill, would you have fired Blake?
I would have done so right away.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it would have been that nice. I'd have said, get your bags packed and get off my stage.
So what was it that hit you that made you say, "Oh yeah, he's got to go"?
Well, you can do a trophy hunt, I think, but to go beyond and take out a whole family or something, that's just not right.
So if
I mean,
he took
that's
out
not
the mom and dad, but not the baby.
No,
then-
even then I would have been, I don't hunt anymore because last time I did, I wounded an animal and I wasn't physically able to get up to it quick enough to put it out of its misery. And after that, I put my gun down and said, I won't do that anymore. I'd take my camera instead if I just.
Is that your phone?
Oops.
uh-oh.
Keep going.
Notifications?
I'm working on it.
How,
That was just
how
to
long have
distract
we been
Bill.
doing this, Chocolate? Nux?
2 years, maybe.
Oh, man.
All right. Turn
so
off.
so it's okay to kill. So if the family would have died that same day by 3 different hunters, that's fine. But the fact that he took out the family all at one time, that's the problem.
Well, I guess it gets down to why are you hunting? He's hunting for pleasure or hunting for status, and I'm uncomfortable with that.
It seems like in Africa they're hunting because just like if we had an overpopulation of an animal, we would actually try and control that population. Well, in Africa, baboons are
They're a nuisance.
out of control,
Yeah,
Right.
and so they hunt them so that they can have somewhat of a normal culture there in the wildlife. So
The word used they, and he's not they.
well, they're invited. They're invited to come over and hunt, especially if hey, if you guys want to pay for it and we can make money off it and we get conservation control, of
That's-
course,
sure.
come on,
Yeah.
right?
But I think at what level do you go beyond just what is right?
Well,
And I think that's the point you're trying to make. There's got to be some fine line there between harvesting and going beyond that and then bragging about it. I think that's where it crosses that line,
well, he was doing within the means of what they allow there, right?
I don't know. That's what I don't know yet.
But there's still an ethical question because just because a state or a country allows something doesn't mean it's
right or wrong.
ethical.
Yeah.
I mean,
we do that all the time here in Idaho.
we're murdering babies
Yep.
in our country under the guise of a legal abortion.
and we have a problem with baboons being killed right now.
well, that's the thing. I mean, we
saw 2 of them this morning.
Baboons?
Well, I woke up and I said, there's something out there.
I was thinking of the law in Deuteronomy. I don't know that I know how to apply this, but
Okay.
but here's a law.
Let's work on it.
From the Old Testament law. It said, if a bird's nest happens to be before you as you go along the way, in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. you shall surely let the mother go, and take the young for yourself, that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days. Now, I don't know. This is an Old Testament law that's situated in a particular society and historical context, but I believe that this law is based on certain universal principles that reflect the character of God. It seems to me that here what's going on, though, is God is requiring the Israelites to care about how they take the lives of animals.
That's right.
And care about longevity. So the mother is to be left.
Right.
Presumably so that they can continue to reproduce. Whereas they're allowed to take the young. Presumably it's for food. Presumably it's not just to show it off on Facebook. So I mean, that has to be teased out. But I would just point, first of all, like, if we're going to find out what is the ethics behind this, we need to go back to the Bible. We need to go back to God's standard and recognize that God does give animals for food. It's clearly explicitly stated. I
don't think anybody's eating much baboon meat who's hunting.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm wondering.
That's right.
Monkey brains.
I don't know if it's used for food. I guess I can also see there's a dominion side of things where, like, you've got too many wolves going on in some
snakes.
area, or too many snakes.
Kill the whole family of snakes.
I do think that wise cultivation of wildlife will mean that at various points, I think we need to be really careful, because I think sometimes we think we know we're doing more than we do. We trim down one population of animals, not knowing that it's going to end up like totally crazy overpopulation of another species, right? And I think that we need to be very humble and careful, but at the same time, if there's a lot of wildlife that is doing harm, I think we're in our right to limit that.
So this is interesting because I talked to Gabe last night about the story. He was mad. Now, why were you so upset? Because you didn't have this take at all.
So, well, I agree. I agree on wildlife etiquette and hunting etiquette and all that stuff. We talked a little bit about that too. But the weightier matters of the law is what got me on this one.
Right.
Where Butch is saying, I have high expectation standards for every appointee in state government, while he oversaw 1,400 babies killed due to abortion in the state of Idaho last year.
Yes.
And he's pressuring his commissioner to step down because he killed a couple monkeys in another nation where they actually do that.
Right.
Like that's
absolutely
part of their culture.
I agree with that, actually. I mean, this is classic Pharisaism, straining out gnats while swallowing camels. When we asked the governors, the potential governors,
Brad Little and Tommy Alquist,
when we had them on the show, we said, what will you do about abortion? And they all kind of stood there like, well, we'll sign legislation if it comes across our desk, we're pro-life, etc. But we asked them specifically, would you use the bully pulpit of the governor's seat? Would you use it to pressure various people for life? Because what he's doing right here is using his authority,
his bully pulpit, to pressure Blake,
to shame people for killing baboons.
Well, honestly, I don't think Butch Otter would have even cared had he not got that much pressure from. I mean, they said
animal rights people.
Well, just people here in Idaho. I mean, I don't even know if they were all animal rights people.
Well, this went national. This was in like New York Times.
Okay.
This is all over the place.
But the majority of the people that were local that complained about it, I think there was only 3 or 4 people who actually didn't mind out of all the people.
So hold those things together. Gabe, you're right. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It's massive hypocrisy to have this kind of outburst and cry and then cave to that kind of pressure over this, even if there's something there, even if there's something there,
right,
legitimate, like what are you doing there? But to do that and not be using the same kind of pressure when you have babies, human beings made in the image of God, being murdered every day, 1,400 a year.
And I just wonder how many people who are pro-choice in his cabinet or in his
are having abortions,
that are having abortions that he hasn't fired.
Right.
I mean, that's a human being we're talking about.
Where's the pressure there?
Otherwise, I don't think that we have to. There's somewhat of a false dichotomy, though, that I don't want to lean into. I don't think we have to have these two in juxtaposition. I think we really can actually care.
Hold them together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can care
That's
about
a great point, Knox.
the life of animals and the life of the human beings and not feel like, because we talk about this, we don't care about that. No, we can actually hold them together and say,
Proverbs actually says that a wise man considers the life of his beast.
That's right.
So it's a godly thing to care about the lives of animals. And there's something really sick and perverse about a man who treats animals with cruelty.
But I don't think, just to be fair to Fisher, I don't think that that's what he was doing.
Sure.
I think that people didn't even catch that.
Right.
What people caught was the fact that he had a baby baboon. That's what caught fire. There was a baby baboon that really bothered people that was there.
That's what I saw.
Because they believe in evolution.
Let me throw a curve at you.
I like it.
Go, Bill.
Okay, we're talking about taking of animals because that's what they need for, they're opening that not for power, but for finances. Why aren't we more worried about where they are education-wise? Can they develop industry? Can they develop farming? Can they do other things so they don't have to rely on that type of activity?
You're saying
Namibia.
In Namibia, yes. So that's why I said I throw a curve, because I'm going to get back to that, because that bothers me more, that they're saying our only way to get income is to have outside people come in and hunt our animals.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, should we not be, and this is a question for church, should we not be over there providing other alternatives in terms of income, growing food, going for water, going for all those other things that we have got in our country, but we're not exporting those. We're exporting other things.
For or against Proposition 1?
I am against it.
You're against Proposition 1?
Yep.
Okay, why?
Why?
Well, let's say what Proposition 1 is real quick.
Somebody tell me what Proposition 1 is.
So Proposition 1 is about making horse racing and gambling legal in the state of Idaho.
And you do not want that to happen.
No, we currently have legal horse racing. What I don't want to see is going that next step of gaming. Because when you go to Las Vegas, who pays for all the lights and all the glitter and everything? It's not the winners. It's the losers. Do we want to have that happening in our state? When you look at what they're talking about is, in my opinion, is slot machines, because you're betting on races that have already occurred, and the machine's going to pick your horse, and then you're going to pull the lever or do something, and if your horse wins, you win. But that's gambling, and I'd rather see if we have the opportunity to bet on live horse racing. I don't think going that next step.
So we're already gambling.
So it's already legal to go to a live race and place bets on a live race if you're there in person.
Yeah, if you want to take that risk, do it.
Yeah.
But when it's the controlled environment, the next step, okay, we're going to vote on, and then you say, well, I like that horse because I remember him winning. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to win on this, because it's a game of chance.
So that game
is
not
video gaming.
It's not connected to the actual race at all, other than just the names are the same.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That nuance was lost on me when I.
Well, we got to talk about this more.
Now, I'm kind of curious about how that.
I want to unpack this.
Yeah, just when we get back. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. More with Bill Goesling when we come back on CrossPolitic. So really, you would have fired him, huh? Even if it was said sorry.
Yeah.
All right. More CrossPolitic coming back. I'll let you answer that next.
Yeah, please do.
Well, CrossPolitic has a new sponsor. Who, you might be asking? Decree Design. Decree Design is a graphic design and web development company that serves your business by helping you speak clearly through visual representation. Serving 90-plus businesses in logo design, print design, brand strategy, web development, and more. Decree Design has a skill and personal touch to customize a package specifically catered to your needs of your business, great or small, and provide personal assistance every step of the way. Whether you're a well-established real estate broker or entrepreneur getting your business off the ground, Decree Design will help your company's visual presence speak clarity and truth. For more information, please visit decreedesign.co or schedule a consultation with Joe at decreedesign.com. Yeah, Joe at decreedesign.com. Hey, and tell them CrossPolitic sent you. I don't have anything in my...
This song just makes me smile every time. You guys need some water?
Yeah,
I'll get you water. I'll get you water. You can introduce.
Need some water?
Yes, please.
Wow, the new intern.
That's why we call him the Water Boy. Welcome back to CrossPolitic.
Thank you, Gabe.
This segment is brought to you by Gabe the Water Boy. He's filling up our cups right now as we speak.
Yep.
And we're really grateful to have with us on the show today a Moscow local since 1985, did you say?
86.
86.
Wow.
Yeah. He was in the Navy for 24 years.
That's correct.
Systems, he studied systems, got a couple master's degrees.
In systems engineering and systems
and
acquisition.
then came to University of Idaho and got a doctorate in education.
Thank you, Gabe.
And Bill Goesling has served on the Moscow School Board.
That is correct.
Also was then appointed to the original state charter school commission.
That's correct.
For Idaho. And then finally, you served also on the state board of education.
That is correct.
And
how did the school board like you running on the charter board?
No, they one led into the other one.
It was.
So I had it's 2 years as vice chair, 5 years as chair.
Okay.
And then probably look for new blood because I'm one of those kinds of people that like to come in and get things started and build, and then that tweaking process. Someone else can do that a lot better. So,
is there tension in Idaho between charter schools and public schools?
Well, there was originally. That was one of the issues that we dealt with because it was a brand new thing, and so it was looked upon as a horse race, a competition. We only have X amount of dollars. Why should we start up a second
now
system?
You're cutting the pie up more, so that means we're going to lose some.
Exactly, and so that's why a lot of the school districts said, no, we're not going to charter any charter schools. So they came to the state, and we started chartering them and dealt with some really disastrous issues like if your son and daughter are going to that charter school and they want to play football or be in the band, it's going to cost you extra money. And I said, wait a minute, they're paying taxes, they're keeping that public school open. They should be able to do that. And slowly we got that wall knocked down, so they accepted them.
Bill's also served as a financial consultant for 13 years, or you did, before retiring. Now you run a little ranch on the edge of town.
What kind of ranch?
Scottish Highlander cattle.
There we go.
Oh, no
way. I'm bucking bales day.
Man, are they good tri-tip?
Oh, yes. Oh, they are. Because what makes them so unique is that
we need a CrossPolitic branded meat. You know?
There you go. Yes. I got some, I'll sell you.
Okay.
But what makes them so great is they got that heavy fur or hair, and so they don't have to marble that big fat list, so that the fat is marbled throughout the meat, so it's extremely tender.
Wow.
The book says it's a lot less cholesterol than normal beef.
Wow.
And people haven't messed with that breed.
Okay.
So that's
interesting.
That's what. So
Bill, you're married. You have 4 children, 2 stepchildren, and 3 grandchildren.
That is correct.
Man. Congratulations on those grandchildren.
Yep.
You baptized your kids, Bill?
2 of them are done, 1 to go.
Toby's available.
And
we can fix that for you.
There we go.
Bill, what church are you involved with? Are you involved with the church?
I'm not involved in a church.
Okay.
We could talk about that a little
maybe
later
we
on.
Can. Yeah. But really grateful to have you on the show today.
Okay.
And you are running for House of Representatives in the state of Idaho, District 5A.
That is correct.
Which is Latah and Benawa counties.
That is also correct.
So we're in Latah County. For those of you who don't know, Benawa is right next door.
Right.
And you are up for election here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, about
November
November the 6th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't mess that up, man.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, wonderful. Why are you doing this?
This is our favorite question for politicians.
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you people?
Well, when I stand in front of the mirror every morning, that same person asks that same question. So I still haven't been able to answer him correctly.
Is your ranch boring?
Yeah. Well, when I first started bucking bales back in college days, there were 70, 80 pounders and wire and got 3 cents a bale. I thought, I was rich then because I could get buck 10 bales. I had enough gas to get into Missoula to party. But now I keep asking my baler. I said, okay, we're 60 pounds. Let's go to 50. Now I said, let's go to 40. Because the challenge is I'm not finding any young men and women that want to buck bales anymore.
Oh, wow.
And that's the challenge, I think, with our youth today is they've lost that willingness to put in that hard work, and especially with their hands.
Yeah.
And
firm up them bones and muscles.
Well, I had a couple football players from one of the local communities said, okay, we want to buff up. And I said, well, I'll pay you in addition to buffing up.
Yeah.
A day and a half later, I was back there by myself.
They bailed on you.
Yeah.
We don't want to be that buff.
Wow.
Then I had one of the football players from the University of Idaho that I'd sort of had been taken under my wing, and we just had a great relationship. And he said, I'll come out and buck bales. And so he's on one side, I'm on the other side. Pretty soon you see these bales coming up and over the wagon, landing on my side.
Uh-oh.
I mean, he's bench pressing 300, 400 pounds. He's got a 50-pound bale, and he goes, okay, I can put it up there, and it just
missed.
Wow.
So
back to the question.
I want to get back to.
Sure, I'm sorry.
So what do you hope to accomplish in running for and hopefully being elected House of Representatives? What's your goal?
Well, my goal is to help people. I've had a lot of people help me very positively throughout my life and guided me through some situations I probably, should have been up in a reform school or something like that.
Send them to a boarding school.
There we go. My mom always said, "What have you done for someone else today?" And when I first 5, 6 years old, she had me out putting garbage cans away for the neighbors, and I thought, well, this is cool, So it's my whole life has been dedicated in one way or another to helping other people. First, on active duty with the military, with the school boards,
right.
and then in right now, more or less, community service.
Are there particular problems in Idaho that you are particularly interested in solving?
Well, my concern is that we came up with a lot of good ideas on the State Charter School Commission, a lot of good ideas on the State Board of Education. And they would go to the governor's office, they would go to Legislature, and they just had a different view on how those things should be funded or not funded. And so the frustration got to a point. I said, well, if I'm going to speak out against these things, would I not be better in the House
to be able to vote for it, against it, kind of thing.
And share information,
and speak to the issues.
And that was one of the things Carolyn Troy asked me to sit in for her for 3 days while she was out of state. And I sat in on 3 committees, and 2 of the committees you're supposed to sit there and keep your light off and keep your mic hidden, And I said, no, I'm down here. I'm
turning it on.
I'm turning that light on.
I'm speaking.
And of course, the chair and one of them goes like this, shut up and go turn your light out. And I said, look, here's an issue. And we were talking about trespassing. And I said, the presenter was saying, okay, if we come across your property to do the right thing, to find that pin, and we damage your property or damage your equipment, we won't hold you liable. We'll take care of it. And I sat there and I thought, wait a minute. I said, what if you're on my property, my bull comes after you, knocks you down, you break a leg? Who's liable? Oh, and the answer was, you can take care of that on your homeowner's insurance. I said, what? Can you imagine what my premium would be the next month?
Oh, serious.
So I brought it up, and I said, common sense is if I'm going to let you across my property, you should hold me harmless for any activity. And it really happened when on the ranch I worked over in Missoula.
Yeah.
We had a situation like that.
Right.
And the person sued the ranch, and it was thrown out. But I said, before we go further, and
wow.
They said, hey, that's common sense.
Right.
But nobody else was thinking about that. So I think bringing someone down there that has just common sense and not afraid to say, hey, guys.
The difference between those two things, I think it's a great example, actually, is it's the difference between somebody taking personal responsibility for their property and for their livestock,
right,
and taking responsibility for choices that you make to go on somebody's property. And that's what needs to get sorted out in those situations.
And it's that looking for that common ground. You have a job to do. I have ownership.
Right.
Can we share that? And so they were both happy.
But the opposite of that is making these sort of safety nets for everything,
right,
which people don't realize what you're doing when you make the safety net for everyone, insurance and all this other stuff. I know that it's helpful and necessary in its place. But if that's what you rely on, what you're actually doing is you're stealing people's personal responsibility and investment in these kinds of decisions. And it's a really practical matter that I don't think people, you call it common sense, but I would say it goes deeper than that. It's the way God made the world. And when people are not held accountable for their actions, they're actually not being treated like human beings.
Yeah.
We're not treating them like volitional creatures who make decisions and then therefore should be accountable for their decisions.
And you don't get what you're trying to get out of that either.
That's exactly. But it's actually a highly dignifying thing to do. It's honoring the image of God in one another when you say, your decisions matter.
Yep.
But if everything's a safety net, we're saying your decisions don't matter.
Preach.
And
really
and then, insurance will take care of that.
Yep.
Then it doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yep.
This is a little onto that point. We just finished, I serve as a deacon at my church, and we just finished the book Toxic Charity.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the book's thesis is figure out how to help the poor in such a way where you're actually giving them dignity. That's part of the thesis.
Not just handouts, not just enabling.
And exactly.
Yep.
And he gave example after example where, you're helping the poor and you're actually taking away their dignity. And one of the principles behind this is don't do something that they can do for themselves.
Right.
And, just a basic.
What's the name of that book again?
Toxic Charity.
You know who the author is? Toxic Charity. Google it. Find it on Amazon. I wanted to push this a little bit back to the education thing, since you got this education thing going on. So one of the things that we are really strong on, our audience knows is, and our conviction is, we are not big fans of government providing education.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, for a number of different reasons, but at the very least, one of the things that, we really don't like, speaking of personal responsibility and initiative, is, being forced to pay into a school system that we don't want to use.
Mm-hmm.
So in a certain sense, there's a couple of different conversations about whether government should be providing education at all.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's going to, my conviction is that people should, if they want to do that, if certain people want to do that, fine. I don't think it's a great idea, but if they want to do that, fine. But I'm a homeowner. I'm a member of this community, but I will not send my children to the government schools because they're training them to become leftists and socialists for the most part. Mm-hmm. And at the very least are teaching them that God is not involved in everyday life because
or God's not even doesn't even exist.
It doesn't even exist. Yeah. And as a Christian, one of the things that God's entrusted me as a father with doing is training up my children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, which means that I'm supposed to teach them that everything in this world orients to Jesus.
Yeah.
And so mathematics, science, spelling, algebra, calculus, reading and writing, all of it,
Gambling.
except for gambling, all of that, all of the good stuff is good and helpful insofar as it's submitted to Jesus and submitted to the gospel and submitted to his word. And so, again, if people want to do that, fine. That's sort of a secondary question. But I guess one of the things I would love to hear from a representative like you, someone who's going to go represent me down in Boise, would be, I really, really strongly believe that parents should have full responsibility to choose how to best educate their own children.
Okay.
And that would, including then, the freedom to use my money to educate my children the way that I deem best.
Okay.
I would, curious your thoughts on that. And would you support parents being able to opt out of paying taxes to public education in order to use those funds to provide the education they believe would be best for them?
That's a mouthful.
Lock the door.
That's
real
a
quick.
mouthful. Yeah.
Lock the door.
Yep. Intern. Don't let him out.
Does
Does
it make sense what I'm asking?
I thought I saw a couple of snakes here. I'm running.
Does it make sense what I'm asking?
Well, I think I guess my point there is, you have a good handle on what you want to do and how you want to do it.
Right.
There are so many others out there that don't have that handle, that don't know what they're doing. So at what point does society say we've got to make some effort to bring education, bring those individuals into the system? And that's where I had some challenges with, and that's why I was supported. Initially, I went down as a traditional member of the Charter School Commission. There was 3 of us from traditional, 3 from charter schools.
Gotcha.
And then we had a referee, the 7th person. I wound up being the referee.
Should have been me.
Yeah, there you go. I could have used you a couple times. But I think, and what we came up with was, in my own, went through a transition, because I said, charter schools, what the heck are they, why don't we do this? But the idea of charter schools was giving parents choice,
right,
giving the school system choice, and then bring the ideas and efforts that those people created and back into the traditional system to improve the traditional system. And I think that's exactly what, the Logos is doing here. That's what St. Mary's, New Andrews.
New St. Andrews.
New St. Andrews.
Thank you very much. Yeah, at the college level.
They're doing a great job.
Right.
And yet you have choices. And I think that's what we have.
So my question, though, has to do with, so I grant that, that's kind of a different discussion about whether we should do that or not. But my question is for those of us that don't want to opt into that,
okay,
shouldn't we have the freedom to use our money to educate our children the way that we want to? So sort of piggybacking on the choice idea.
Yeah.
Some parents will want to choose charter schools over traditional schools. Okay, fine, different discussion. But what about those of us that don't want to use either one of those options?
Okay.
Would you favor legislation that would allow parents to just opt out completely, meaning they can keep their money, the tax dollars that are being used to fund charter schools,
right,
or traditional public schools? Right. And instead, I would love to use that money, for example, to pay my tuition. Right now, I'm paying for 2 tuitions.
2 tuitions, yeah.
I'm paying for seats that I'm not using in the public school and the charter school, and I'm paying double because I'm paying tuition now at Logos School for my kids.
Yeah. And you're paying into an ideology that you don't agree with.
And I don't particularly agree with that. Would you be open to that kind of thing where you'd give choice to private school or homeschool people who want to keep their money and use the money to educate their children the way they want to?
I'm going to delay my answer on that one.
You're a politician.
No, I'm not a politician. I tend to think that we're going through a period of transition.
Right.
And I think that's what you're addressing. How fast can we get from point A to point B? And when I went down in, public schools, charter schools, no. Now we've shifted into the charter schools. We have some great homeschooling, so that question comes up. But then again, what about the society's need for an educated community?
Sure,
I agree. That's a real issue.
Can the church at this point step up and say we can help all? And we may be moving that direction, and maybe that's the way we should be.
I like that question.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
But how do we get there? That's the question.
Well, first we got to stop.
Fast?
We got to stop taking the people who give to the churches. Stop taking their money. So right now, the people who give to the church are getting robbed, where they could give more to the church for things like that.
I see.
And to the ideology that actually, think about it, you talked about going over to Africa and making wells and helping out. That's one of the church's biggest things. We're the people who came up with that idea.
But the state is taking so much money.
How can
and
they?
The feds.
Yeah.
And they're all taking so much money that we don't have the money.
We're restricting the church's ability to do exactly that thing.
Yeah. Well, then we go back to the premise of the Constitution, the separation of state and church. Is that something we need to go back and re-examine? Do we need a closer relationship? That was one of the issues we dealt with. One of the charter schools, they were very much into the Bible as the primary text.
Amen.
And yet we were bumping against the state law.
Right.
So
what was the state law that you were bumping against?
The separation of church and state.
It shouldn't.
There's no.
In the state of Idaho?
State of Idaho.
I didn't know. I don't think there is a state law of separation of church and state.
Oh, yeah.
Is it coming from the federal government?
No, it's from the state law. The state law says that you cannot use, and this is because this was appealed up to the Ninth Circuit, and I was in the middle of it.
You're in the middle of it.
And what it was the you could not use taxpayer money for a religious. In this case, it was a primary text.
Right.
Had they said we're going to use it as a secondary text,
interesting, then
it was okay.
So we got some more work to do.
So, but evolution's allowed to be taught as a primary text in public schools.
I'm sorry?
Evolution's allowed to be taught as a primary text in public schools.
I believe it is, yes.
Yeah, that's religion.
Yeah, well, but as it got down to it, then the fine point was, if I give you a homework assignment and I say for you to go into a particular chapter and a particular verse and do your homework on that, that was wrong.
Okay.
If I said go home and do that particular chapter, that particular verse, and go to the Quran and go somewhere else, and one of the others and do the same thing.
So sort of if it's comparative.
If comparative, that's called a secondary trust or a secondary text.
Okay.
That was okay.
Interesting.
But this particular group said, no, it has to be the primary text. And we said, let's compromise.
No, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
I missed out on that one.
No, you can finish your sentence.
No, I think that was the difference, and we weren't going to. They didn't want to move, and of course we couldn't get the law to change, so we were at an impasse. And I think that's what we want to send someone down. It says, okay, let's look for common. What makes sense, and let's get something moving in the right direction. But
like, stop stealing my money. More CrossPolitic when we come back.
We want our kids to have an amazing education, but we are sending our children into this world, and we want our kids to be able to stand toe-to-toe with this world and be able to defend their faith. CC really, really, really helps you to get that foundation. I love that they are getting, they have a safe place to explore their faith, and that biblical worldview is being reinforced. What we're doing at home is what's happening in the classroom. How important is it to you to be involved in your child's education? How important is it to you to instill your values in your child? How important is it to you to be a part of something that's a little bit bigger than you? How important is it to you to have your child be a part of something that's just a little bit bigger than them? Everything that I wanted for my children's education, every question I asked, Classical Conversations was the answer.
And as
No, keep going.
As I try to say, we have obligations and how we raise money for those obligations, and that discussion has to be two-phase. What are those obligations?
Yeah, what are government obligations to its people?
And then once we decide that, then let's look at how we raise money to meet those obligations.
But no one's talking about, can a person be free to not teach your kids to read? Like, can I, if I choose to, see that the government's obligation is all still infiltrated into that person's ability.
Welcome back to CrossPolitic.
Hey guys, how y'all doing?
We've just kept talking.
It's CrossPolitic.
And
during the break, a whole lot of stuff happened. Killed a few snakes. A whole family of them, whole tribe of snakes.
We got with us Mr. Bill Goesling. We're thankful to have him with us in the studio today. He's raising tri-tip steaks out on the corner,
Santa Maria style,
out on the corner of Moscow and Paradise Ridge, and he's also running for House of Representatives. It's District 5A.
That's 5A. That's correct.
Latah, Benewah counties, and we've been talking about Idaho politics today. So thanks. Share the show, and become a member if you aren't already.
Yeah, if not.
So I wanted to kick it back. I know. There's lots here. Do you want to? I wanted to get to Proposition 1 and Proposition 2.
Okay, so Proposition 1, did we hit that a little bit already?
We did.
So let's come back to that. But Proposition 2 is really eating at me right now because
this is a second thing on the Idaho ballot coming up November 6th.
Yeah.
We talked about Proposition 1, which is the it's the gamification of horse racing.
Yep.
Which is amazing. I did not know that was a good
big word.
Gamification.
And then Proposition 2.
Yeah.
What's Proposition 2?
Basically expanding Obamacare, Medicaid throughout
the state of Idaho.
You probably to give it better definition.
Well, I think it's unfortunate. The federal law right now says we have Obamacare, but the way it's set up, each state was able to accept it or not. Idaho said no, we're not going to accept it in this way. So over the last several years, we've been trying to fill a way. Determine a best way to meet the needs of those people who were not being covered by Obamacare. And you'll hear different numbers from 50,000 to 70,000. I've heard as high as 90,000 people that fall in this gap. Many of them for no reason other than they're in a type of employment. And a good example is if you're working in the woods. Right now, we've got an extra couple weeks of work because the weather hasn't changed.
Right.
But if we had a lot of rain right now, you'd be out of a job. And you'd have to wait until spring thaw comes and you can get back in there.
Or go get another job.
But that's right now we have surplus of jobs. But,
you can move.
Okay.
You could. You had to.
And you moved from Texas to Idaho?
I've done it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have.
For a job?
For a job.
Oh,
sure.
yeah, absolutely.
If I'm not making money in the state.
Yeah, well, I moved 17 times in 24 years.
There we go.
But you got to do what you got to do to make your money, right?
Yeah. But I mean, and that's again, we can go back and argue education. If I've lived in Benewah County and all my years I've spent working in the woods, and that is what I know, and I can do it very well. And all of a sudden now I find myself not able to find where do I go to work?
Yeah.
And that's the area where we really have to emphasize education.
Well, your job's up on the chopping table coming November 6th, though, right? So
well, no, my job's not up.
One of your jobs.
You can go back and keep making steaks.
That's right. That might actually be a better business, actually.
I think part of this discussion, though, with Prop 1, education, Prop 2 now that we're talking about, did God give the government the biblical authority to do X?
Right.
And then secondly, is it right and proper that the government should maybe do this? If there's no clear direction from the Lord, the second principle would be, is it right and proper that the government maybe get involved in?
Okay.
So are you yes or no on Prop
regulating
2?
Gambling, whatever.
Proposition 2, yes.
You're yes.
Yes.
You're yes in that.
And I've already voted, so I've committed myself.
So you're committed to covering the Medicaid throughout.
But here's what I would argue and would suggest on that. It's got to be a phased process. Went out and they got the signatures. It's going to be voted on November 6th, so the people will have an opportunity to speak, which is what we all want. It goes to the legislature. The legislature has to make a decision. How are we going to fund it? Because there is a 10% component that we have to do.
About that.
Yep.
Well, okay.
'Cause I don't go shopping for stuff
90%
that, I mean,
comes from the federal government, 10% comes from state.
I go window shopping for stuff I can't afford. That'd be nice one day, but I can't buy stuff I can't afford.
But then again, are you not already sending some of your money back to the good people in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, which is, again, we're talking about stealing at that point.
So when the guy came by, so I had a guy come by recently, knocked on my door and said, "Hey, I'm here to encourage you to vote for Proposition 2." And so I asked him about it, and he explained this is basically taking funds that we've paid in to
that we are paying in.
We are paying in federally.
That goes to the federal government.
And right now, Idaho is not taking those funds.
Correct.
And so I told him, I said, I won't vote for Proposition 2. Primarily, I didn't know all that it's funding, but primarily because I don't think the federal government should be taking that money to begin with. I don't believe that the government, state government or federal government, is good at providing the kind of health care Idahoans need.
Okay.
The people of Idaho need the kind of health care that local communities can provide. And the further it gets away from the local community, the worse job they do. The best person for health care is mom.
That's right.
Okay.
Right? Mom, I don't want some state representative telling me what kind of cough medicine to give my kid when he's like, I want my wife to tell what kind of cough medicine. But then I want to go out from there and have personal relationships with doctors, with nurses, pediatricians, with whatever. And I think, but again, back to, you say, is local communities, are they up for it? Do they have the infrastructure to do that? Well, no, not currently, because so much of our money's being taken away so that the good people of local communities, the businessmen, the doctors, and so forth, are so strung up with regulations and fines and taxes. We can't take care of our local community, our local, our neighbors, which is, I think we should take care of our neighbors.
Okay.
And I think we're in a position where we can actually hold each other accountable. In a way that, how are you going to hold some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. accountable?
Well, and they don't even care about that in some sense, because they're literally, Obamacare now funds transgendered surgeries. So against the Hippocratic Oath, Obamacare is now doing damage to people who think they can be women.
Right.
And they fund the surgery. And Gritman, our local hospital here in Moscow, they actually do transgendered surgeries here in Moscow, and no one says anything about it. So we have this bureaucracy, like Toby was talking about. We have this bureaucracy that it's actually doing damage, financial damage, communal damage, and actually physical damage, to paying for physical damage to the patients. And then kind of what Prop 2 is saying, let's just adopt more of that.
Right. I want to at least keep the federal government out of Idaho healthcare. Which is, I think, probably the reason initially why we didn't take the funds, is that people were objecting to Obamacare and saying, Washington, D.C. is not your business. It's not your responsibility before God to take care of us. At the very least, I'd like it limited to the state of Idaho. I think that's even more expansive than I would prefer it. I'd prefer it to be shrunk down even smaller.
Right.
But I think the Idaho state needs to stand and say, no, this is not your business.
Yeah.
And I think better than that ought to tell the feds, give us our money back.
That's right.
But you don't have the business to take it in the first place. State governments have been run over by the feds.
Yeah.
Over
in
and
the name of federal funding.
Over and over again. I mean, how much percentage of our land, the state of Idaho's land, like 30%?
Oh, I think it's more than that.
More than that?
More than that.
It's basically like kind of pseudo-owned, grabbed by the feds. Yeah. They sort of lease it back to us.
Well, that's a whole different subject.
But I'm just saying it's another example, of federal overreach.
Well, let me come back from my experience as a guardian ad litem, or as a advocate for children.
Yes.
Couple of situations I dealt with. I had 9 foster children. I was responsible for it. Again, I don't know if you know the cost of guardian ad litem program. Is mom and dad both have state-appointed lawyers, or they're private lawyers. The state has the attorney general. The children have no one representing them. So that's where the cost of guardian ad steps in. That was my responsibility. And you mentioned about mom. These kids didn't have a mom.
Right.
And they were feral.
Right.
And by feral, I mean they didn't know how to use forks, spoons.
We've done foster care too.
So I'm sorry.
Very familiar
so
with
you're
it.
great.
Yeah.
So if it hadn't been for those 4 solid foster families that helped me out, we would have some real problems.
Yep.
So who steps in to help those children help. And of course, foster parents are there, but there's more children than foster families.
Sure.
And that was my concern is mom cannot be there to provide that frontline medical help. So who then steps up and provides in the community? Okay.
Yep.
So, and we're beginning to see that change where we have groups of people bind, and I don't remember the name of the organization. It says, okay, we join this group and we will take care of each other financially in event of an illness. And that is starting to develop. And I think we're seeing doctors now beginning to develop their own patient list or their own small community of patients.
So we have like Dr. Story, for example, Rod Story
Emily,
in town.
Direct care or something?
Care?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And I went to her opening. I think it was Dr. Story.
Maybe if it's a female doctor, it might be a different doctor.
Yeah, it's Emily.
There's another one.
The one I'm thinking of is Rod Story. He's a gentleman who's opened a private practice doing that sort of thing.
I think there's a female doctor.
Yeah, and she's doing and that's
similar thing.
And so I think that's kind of things that we're evolving into. And I know Carl Bergel and I had a great conversation about that health care. And I think that's where the church is beginning to broaden its influence and broaden its ability to help out.
And there's health share organizations out there.
That was the word I was saying.
Samaritan Ministries and similar.
But here's what we're doing is we're actually just making it harder when we adopt Prop 2. We're making it harder for these kind of organizations to exist over time. And when Obamacare started, the deductibles were the average deductible nationwide was about $300 to $400. Before this, like pre-2008,
it's like $1,300.
This is like pre-2008. And
Obamacare
has increased the deductible that you pay out of your own pocket up to about. I think it's now the average deductible is at $1,400, $1,400.
I'm not paying that,
which is insane.
Sorry,
I ain't paying that.
So, but when the government keeps doing the same thing over and over again in this area,
and making it worse,
and then expecting that they're actually solving the problem, but they actually keep
because what happens is when the government funds something, prices go up. When government,
because they're in competition with the private practice.
Exactly. Prices go up because now there's a money flow happening. It's not real competition.
As a financial consultant,
you kind of understand that principle. But
if I lay $1 on there and you're going to say, I'll give you $1.02 for it, and you say $1.05, that's what I'm going to do.
And this is the point, though. I think long term, that is crushing the poor. Yeah. It's not helping the people who don't have work and can't provide the weakest and poorest among us. It's crushing them. Yep. Mm-hmm. And here's the biblical principle that I would argue for.
Okay.
In 1 Timothy 5, Paul's talking to Timothy, who's planting a church in Ephesus, and telling him how to take care of widows. Okay. So widows would be similar to orphans, similar to foster kids, right? Yeah. And Paul says, basically, there are certain circumstances under which the church can support widows. Mm-hmm. But he says, first of all, the family of the widow needs to be called upon to take care of that widow first.
Okay.
And he says, if anyone does not provide for his own family, especially for those of his own household, he is denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. That's 1 Timothy 5:8. Mm-hmm. So the first line of defense in terms of health care and welfare is the family. Yeah. And so first we go and see, is there family that can help these people? But then in this context, Paul is talking about situations when there's no family, which you're pointing out. And again, I've done foster care and I'm familiar with these kind of situations. And that's then the church is the next line of defense. And I would include the church community. I would include even just local communities broadly. Doesn't have to necessarily be the church proper, but local doctors, local hospitals, local social work, whatever, like a kind of local community care.
Right.
And then I would say, last of all, I think there probably are hard cases where things fall through the cracks. And I can appreciate then there being a very, very limited role for the state probably in places just to help where there's something falling through the cracks.
Man, I would say but hardly any cases I can imagine that happening where that's needed. Well, and if it is needed, then it's just like some sort of emergency hurricane situation.
Right. That kind of thing. I'm talking about real extreme situations.
Even the government doesn't do good there. We still have to come in and we get there before the government.
Yeah. But we saw my brothers in Texas going in.
Yeah, we don't play that.
Getting their big rig trucks going through the hurricane waters.
But I think it's really, it's interesting though, that here in this place, Paul never says, and then if that doesn't work, ask the Roman centurion.
Yeah.
Mm.
If they're going to help.
Ask the federal government.
And if that doesn't work, talk to the Ephesian city council. He's in the city of Ephesus. There's a city council there. He never says that. elsewhere in Romans 13, Paul says that the civil magistrate is established by God and is given the sword to punish evildoers and ought to praise those who do righteousness. And so the fundamental central duty of civil government, according to the Bible, is punish evildoers and praise the righteous. So people who are doing a good job, praise them, endorse them, bless them, get out of their way so they can do their job. And then people who are breaking laws need to be punished.
Right.
But I would say education, healthcare, welfare, these are things that they're given to families and churches to take care of. And the government, I think, needs to see itself as we need to get out of the way.
Okay.
So we can cheer it on. Bless those people who are doing a good job at it. But I think our report card of the government, since, FDR, probably before that, the more that government has gotten involved in education, health, welfare stuff, the worse it's gotten.
I mean, if you want to,
not the better.
A good kind of gauge, if you want to look at the black community, just look at the black community over since the early 1900s, right up until about the 30s, about 40s, really. Right at that change where government start interfering with the black community, it actually did more damage to the black community than slavery really did. Because the black family
said what?
It did.
What?
Because the nucleus of the family is the husband and wife.
Right.
And if you can separate that, then you can destroy it.
Yep.
And that requires dependence
That's right.
on one another.
Yeah,
but if you can get funding elsewhere, it's actually breaking down the glue that holds families together.
So the very thing that
That's
I thought they wanted to help, they actually did more damage and has continued to over these years. And so you just look at what the government does, thinking they're helping, and it's not.
Okay.
And
it's toxic charity.
Exactly, and it tears us apart.
Toxic charity.
And so one thing that I'm listening to you and I've been noticing is I see that you really do want to help people.
Yep.
And I appreciate that.
All of us here do.
I think
All
we do,
of us
absolutely.
do.
And I think that's what's encouraging about talking to you. But I think that the way that we do it, though, is very important. Not just that we have the heart to do it, but how we talk about doing it is really helping or hurting.
Yep.
Proposition 2 also expands funding to Planned Parenthood. It says in your notes here. Is that true?
Yep.
It expands funding for abortifacient contraceptive drugs. So I think Christians should vote no on Proposition 2 just purely on that. I mean, Planned Parenthood needs to die. Planned Parenthood does not need our funding. And we certainly don't want to be funding abortifacient contraceptive drugs.
Not if we care about the kids.
Right, I mean, who are the weakest among us, really?
The kids, the
little ones, the kids, the unborn children in Idaho. But man, we could keep talking. I don't know what.
No.
So
go ahead.
So
I'll give you the last word.
I took some quick notes, and I fully agree with you. The family foundation is where it's at, and we've got to go back to that concept of mom and dad taking care of it. And that's one of the reasons why I just disagree with a lot of people on pre-K education. Kindergarten, great, but pre-K, you're starting to take that kid away from mom and dad. And mom and dad need to be there to provide that first, second, third, fourth year of education, and then go to kindergarten and then go on. But I think we've lost that ability. Even I talked to a teacher the other day at kindergarten. She said, Bill, I've got kids in my class that don't know rhymes.
Right.
A little Jingle Bell or Humpty Duty.
They come into kindergarten not knowing
that. So they've lost the parents haven't provided that part of it. That growth, that involvement, or that and that's what's concerning to me.
Well,
and so when I first my son and his wife decided to homeschool for a while, and they started at about 2 years old. They started providing it, and I thought, and then as I realized, I learned that there's value there because now that they're in a regular school system, they're just way out ahead of their peers, and in fact, they were in a charter school, and I got a call the other night, said, Dad, it's not working. I said, why? Because the charter school had lost its direction. They were going for the business model because they wanted to increase enrollment and so they're going to go back to the public school, which was the only alternative.
Right.
But I said, the momentum that you started way back when, and now it went through 2 good Texas schools, and then good solid Missouri schools. Now they're down in Florida, and they make some decisions. So I go back to the family and then the church. One of I've got all kinds of ribbons on my chest from Vietnam days, but the ribbon that's not there that I most prized is my God and Country Award from Boy Scouts.
Huh.
I mean, that was something my mom and dad did. They said, you owe the church. And so the God and Country Award is that you do a patriotic, but you spend a lot of time at the church. I remember going down the pews and putting the little pencils in and folding the broken ones out and sharpening them. But it was my contribution, and it's still there.
So what happened? Why aren't you in church?
Vietnam.
Really?
How did Vietnam take you away from church?
Explain that.
Well, you're in a life and death situation, and I lost a wingman, and I was deep in country, and the book said, get around, get the hell out, no matter what. And I had to make a decision. Do I stay and complete the mission? And knowing that if I didn't complete it, the whole air wing would have to come back in the next day to do that particular mission again, and they knew we would be coming, so we would potentially lose more people.
Yeah.
And I also knew that mission brought me down over Hanoi, and I knew that I had several friends that were down in those cells. And every time they heard one of us go over, it was a little bit, we're still there for you.
Uh-huh.
Emotional.
Yeah.
No,
but
that's all right.
So I had a come to at that point in life, and and we made that's when I have this special relationship. So whenever I have a challenge in my life, that's how I connect up. I don't.
So you're saying that actually, you feel like that brought you close to God?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no way enough. You're at 30,000 feet, and missiles are going all over around you. You look up and say, okay.
There's a lot of things get cleared up, don't they?
When you find out what the real life is.
Exactly.
And so, I've gone to a lot of different churches, and I just don't feel that connection that way, and so I go out and sit on the hill up there on the ridge.
So you kind of have that. You feel like you have that connection on your own.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah, he can do what he kept me going for that day, and since then, and that's part of that dedication of payback.
Well, maybe
it's paying it forward.
Maybe just a couple thoughts about that. One is when you gave your life to Christ, which it sounds like that's you gave your life to Jesus. One of the things that he came to do was not just die for me and you, but he came to die for a body of believers, right? And so when part of what we view church as is we're in a covenant with a body of Christ, a body of believers. And so that's one reason why we go to church on Sunday is because we go to gather with the body of Christ.
Okay.
And it's not just necessarily to make some kind of spiritual connection, because but it has to do with the fact that God has said, this is where I am. I'm working through this body of people.
Mm-hmm. And I do periodically will go, and it would be the Protestant, the Lutheran, the various different churches, and it's there. But I think my own personal relationship is very close and very narrow. I mean, unfortunately, but I think that's part of the reasons I dedicate myself to the foster program and dedicate myself to running away from running.
It seems from my perspective that there's not much truth like guiding you in what you're doing, because you just said I go to the Presbyterian church, the Lutheran church, or the Baptist church. There should be truth guiding us. And then secondly, when we talk a little bit about your faith, I hear a lot of response about works. I go and help these people.
Right. I
go and serve these people, which is good and noble. But to bring my works before Jesus is just filthy rags, right? And so to talk about my relationship with God, first I want it to be built on truth, because if it's not true, then it's not built on Jesus.
Right.
And then secondly, when I talk about my faith, I want to first talk about what Jesus did for me, not what I'm trying to do for him.
I see. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Hold on real quick. Hey guys, pray for Bill. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbors, yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. We're going to talk to Bill off air. Praying. Right.
Thanks for being on CrossPolitic.
Thanks, Bill.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was a great learning lesson.